Using Excel's tables feature will save you massive amounts of time. Plus, it will dramatically reduce the risk of errors. It will make your spreadsheets really easy to follow and easy to use, all of which will save you even more time down the road. Bold statements? Yes. And I'm going to show you now 12 reasons why I think that is true. Before we go on though, what on earth is an Excel table? Right, well, just to clarify, it's not a pivot table and it's not a data analysis table. It's simply a collection of data that Excel can refer to as a table, and that will open up a whole load of additional features and benefits to you. And to turn something into a table, you go on the insert menu and you hit table. As long as you're inside a collection of data, it will make an assumption about where that data is. It'll make an assumption about headers, and you can tick or untick that, but basically you hit OK. This is now a table, and you'll see that we now have a table design menu, all of these whole new bunch of features open, plus a new right click menu associated with tables. And why are all these new features going to save you time? This is what I'm going to show you. First reason I think you should use tables is auto expanding ranges or dynamic ranges. One of the great things about Excel tables is that whenever you put new data into the table, it's automatically picked up by any formulas or linked reports or charts or pivot tables or anything. So anything that is linked to that table will automatically pick it up. And this is just an amazing time saver in Excel, because actually a lot of time is wasted sort of changing formulas or changing ranges of cells. So I'll give you an example here. I've got a little dashboard here where you can click on various things, and you've got a little pivot table here and some slices and a chart. And you've also got a drop-down list here where you can pick the top customers in a particular category. Now, all of that is run from this table here, which is a large table of data. Now, I've got a whole load of new data that I've put down here that you can see, and I'm going to add this to the table. So I'm just going to copy all of that, and I'm going to paste it on the bottom of the table. And the first thing you notice is it sort of picks up all of the same kind of formatting as the table. So it's pretty clear that it's in. But here's the proof. When you go back to this report, if I refresh this, you'll see, hopefully notice that small business, the brand new customer segment, has come in, it's been added to the slicer, and we can see the numbers here. And it's also been added to this drop-down list here, and these numbers as well are all working completely fine. Not a single formula needed to be updated, nothing, just literally copy and paste straight in. So that is a brilliant feature of tables that will save you an awful lot of time indeed. But of course, that's not it actually. There's more to this auto expanding stuff. I go to this table, and so one thing, for example, I go to the end. If I hit the tab key, you'll see, hopefully you can see that it's put another row on the bottom automatically, and this will now get picked up by any data ranges. I can also drag and drop the table range around to include other things. And if I type anything on the right hand side, so I'm going to type the word total, and I can put a formula in there in a minute, that will automatically expand that table to include this column as well. So that will be available now in other reports and anything linked to the table. Auto expanding, a brilliant feature of tables. Reason for using tables number 2, structured references. A great thing about tables is structured referencing. Now, Structured referencing, you might wonder what on earth it is. It really is just a way of referring to cells inside a table that is much more natural language based. It's much easier to understand. It's a lot harder to go wrong, and it's actually a massive shortcut as well, because you can refer to entire columns and entire areas of the table just with one sort of click of the mouse, or potentially just typing and stuff. So let me show you what I mean, and I'm going to pick something outside of this table for the moment. I'm just going to do the sum of 2022. So let's take the sum, and then normally if you wanted to do 2022, you might sort of do something like this, and you highlight perhaps what you wanted, or if you're a bit clever, you know, you might use a few shortcut keys. But essentially what you get is some like column cell reference numbers, basically, you know, in this case G4 to G28. But with tables, you get something a lot better. So if I click on that like that, you'll see with that arrow there, it highlighted the whole of that column, and it put in table 21 and then square brackets 2022. So in other words, the table name followed by the column name in square brackets. And just hitting enter on that will give me my total straight away. Now, table 1 might not mean a lot to you, but if you go back into the table on table design, you'll see the first thing on the left here is the table name. And if I change that to orders, and I'm actually going to put TBL in front of it, which you'll see why a bit later I do that. I'll call that table orders. You'll see now straight away this has changed to say the sum of table orders 2022. Of course, I could change that to 2023, you can, or 2021. You can see the highlighted area on the screen moving. But also, when I knocked off that number 1 there, you'll see now with the arrow keys, I've got all of my potential columns listed for that table. Then I can just hit tab on any of them to pick it up. If I remove all of that and just put a square bracket, you'll see I get a list of all of the tables, including headers, all the data, the entire thing, just the totals, and then all of the column names. So, you know, for a sum, obviously it's not going to make any sense to pick the sum of product name, but for many other formulas, that's ideal. So this is an excellent feature, this structured referencing. And if you're inside a table, now I'm going to make this total. So first off, let's do the sum of 2021 to 2024. And you'll see kind of what it's done here is create this reference that says it's the sum of the orders. I'll explain that @ symbol at the moment, but from 2021 to 2024. So that's very clear what you're doing. Now, I mean, it would be fairly clear if it said like F4 to I4, you'd be able to see it. But it's much clearer to somebody else using the spreadsheet what that is doing, and especially if it was outside of the table or on another sheet or something. This @ symbol just means the same row as the current row. So that's one way of doing it. The other way, of course, would be to just add this plus this plus this plus this, and you can see this time you don't need the table name. It's not using the table name, and the reason for that is it's within the same table, and it's just saying take 2021 from this current row, 2022 from the current row, etc, etc. So that is a fantastic feature, the structured referencing. It makes everything a lot easier to see what's going on. Huge, like dramatic reduction in error risk, because you can see clearly what your formula is doing, and so can everyone else that uses the spreadsheet. And if other people know what they're doing and there's less likely to be an error, it's going to save you yet more time. Reason number 3 for using tables is speed of formula entry. Now normally, if I was on this orders not table here and I wanted to put a total column on here, I could type the word total. I'm going to have to make that bold, potentially sort of format it the same way as that. And then I'm going to do my sum across here. And bear in mind, I'm using kind of shortcut keys to do a lot of this. and I get that, and then I'm going to copy that down, and I could try double clicking there, but if there were any gaps or whatever, that wouldn't work. If I didn't know that trick, I'd literally have to copy and, you know, scroll down. You might even be doing this with a mouse. Oh dear, you know, or could go to the end, and that would be what I do. Contrast that inside a table. So this time I do equals the sum, and I'm going to highlight that. So straight away we've got our 2021 to 2024. Close my parentheses, hit enter, and there it is, all the way down the column to the very end, including any blank rows that we've had. I'll take that off now. And yeah, dead simple. So perhaps I want to look at, you know, previous year versus previous year. So if I do versus prior year, straight away it adds a column, 2024 minus 2023. Very clear from the formula what it is. Hit enter. There we go. We get all of our results spilled straight down through the table, ready to access with any kind of formula. Reason number 4 for using tables to save masses of time, and that is the built-in styles. You can really quickly format your data to look good in literally a click of a button, and it's fully customizable too. So as long as you're anywhere in the table, you'll get a table design menu, and on here, as you can see, you have all these designs, and you can hover over any of these and you get a preview straight into your sheet of what they're going to look like. And there's absolutely loads of them. All right, so you can have like dark ones, light ones, and you can even have completely blank, showing, you know, not really showing any indication that it's a table. Well, what you can do is you can customize this in many ways, really. So first off, you can switch on or off the banded rows, and you can switch on and off banded columns. And if you put both on, it kind of looks a bit weird, so typically I'll stick with the rows. You can make the first column different or the last column different, depending on, you know, that might be a useful thing, especially if the grand total is in the last column. And you can switch the filter buttons on or off, and the header row on or off. One of the things you can do is modify some of the styles that you have. So let's say that that one's pretty close to what we want. We want that one, or maybe this blue one here, right? So I'll click on it, and then if I right click and say duplicate, because I can't modify it, and I'll call that up for Excel, and I can modify this to my heart's content. So what I'm going to do is perhaps put, say, the first stripe row. I'm going to change the format of that by maybe making it like perhaps a light blue, like that, rather than the grey. So let's do that and hit OK. And you might think, well, it's not changed, but the reason is because it's created this custom style up here, and I need to click on that now to do it. And you can do numerous things in terms of you know, changing this custom style, but one of the things you can do is set it as a default, and from then on, every time you turn something into a table, it will look like this. So perhaps you might want to create your own sort of unique style and design of table, and then instantly apply that to any data. And even if you don't want it as a table, you could apply this, and then you can hit this button here, convert to range, and it will turn it back into, say, a normal spreadsheet, you know, with normal kind of referencing. It'll even change these formulas. So if I convert this to a range and hit yes, you'll see it's changed these formulas back to this referencing style, but it's kept all these formats. So it's a really quick way of formatting stuff in spreadsheets for a quick design, regardless or not of whether you want to use that as a table. So I'm just going to undo that, turn it back into a table there. And one other point on table design styles is that if I say put my own formatting on, so say I actually think, well, I want to highlight, this customer here, Chuck Clark. I'm going to highlight them with a yellow background for some strange reason. But when I go back and I say, actually, I prefer a different style and click on here, you'll see this formatting that I've done, it kind of stays on top of sits on top of all this table design here. So I can go back to this one and I've still kept my formatting and highlighting that I put on. So you're not destroying anything at all. You're sort of changing something underneath. And if you think, well, actually, that's kind of annoying, I did want that changed. Well, if you right click on it, you'll see you can have apply and clear formatting or apply and maintain formatting. Default will maintain the formatting you've got, but if you hit clear formatting, you'll go back to, it will remove any highlighting, so you have the best of both worlds there. So really quick way of making something look really great in your spreadsheet and making it really clear to people using the data, what it is and where it's coming from. The fifth great reason to use Excel tables is the totals feature. On a table, if you click anywhere in it, you'll get the table design menu appear, and on there you'll see there's a tick box for a total row. And if I tick that, you might not see that it's done anything, but what it's actually done is at the bottom of the screen here, it's put on this total row here. And what it'll do by default is it'll put a total on the final column, and it's put a formula in there saying that's the subtotal of whatever's showing. And the great thing about it being a subtotal is it means that anytime you filter this data, this total will reflect what is being shown in the filter. And subtotal 109 means a sum excluding any hidden or filtered rows. So it will purely be what you see on screen. But if I click on that drop down box there, let's just move up here, you'll see we have none, don't know why you want that, but average, counts of numbers, min, max, standard deviations, variations, and then hit more functions. You've got even more functions that you can use. And every time you click on another column, you'll see you get another drop down list, and you can put, say, a sum in there and a sum in there. Now, you might think, well, that's not going to save me time because I could have just dragged that formula across there on normal range, it would all work. But what is great is that when you add on new data, so let's just put on a new row here, tab it, the totals all move down. I mean, these formulas aren't working at the moment, but these totals all move down and they will include any new rows. So this will, you don't need to change these formulas ever because they're actually picking up the column totals from the table, and they're using this referencing system for tables, where structured references, where they pick up the column, no formulas needed. Now, the other thing about adding new data as well is that you might think, oh, you need to insert some rows here to put the new data in, but if I put these two lines here, 3 lines here, and I paste them here, you'll see that the total, even though I technically sort of pasted over the total row moved down. The table knows it needs to be at the bottom, and it will automatically shift it down, and of course it's picked up the entire range anyway. Now I'm going to put another sum on there so you can see that. And if I now, because I've now put all that in, if I take off the total row, it will disappear. And when I put it back on at any time in the future, it remembers my choices here. So if I change that one to account, for example, take the total row off, add it back on again, it adds it back on as a count. So you can just switch them on and off depending on what you want to look at and what you want to do. So it's a great little kind of feature like that. And one thing that's perhaps a little bit of a pain about these formulas here is that you can't just copy and paste that to there, because what's happening is it's picking up the wrong column. And also another slightly annoying feature is that you can't sort of drag that reference column around as you could before. You'd have to go in and sort of change it to the right year or something like that afterwards, and that's all right. I've only got 4 columns, but you know, it becomes a bit of a pain to say the least if you've got like 10 or something like that, or even 100. And you can actually get around this, because one of the things you can do is use the indirect function to refer to the column header. And don't worry if you don't know this function, but what it essentially does, indirect, is it takes literally the piece of text you give it as if it were some kind of cell reference. So if you said equals indirect A1, it's the same as saying equals A1. But in table notation, that's really useful, because I can say, rather than 2021, I can say it's indirect H3, and it will give me the whatever's in H3 as if it were some sort of reference. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to use the indirect function in there to show you that you could just copy and paste it across. So what we need to do, we need to change that into an indirect reference. So the 2021 is the only bit that's different between each of these formulas. It's the year, and it's the cell H3 that contains the year. Now it'd be nice if we could just replace that with H3, and then when we drag and drop it, it'll just change to I3, J3, K3. It's not going to do that because it's inside these square brackets and it thinks it's getting some kind of notation. So instead, we're going to use this indirect function. And the first thing we need to do is we need to tell it which table we're referring to, because although we're in the table itself, because we're using indirect, we need to give it the table name. And we're going to put that in quotes. And this table, on that table design menu, you can see it's called TBL report data. So report data. And we'll leave on the square brackets. And then the next part of the formula is going to be the whatever the contents of H3 is. So we're going to join that to whatever's in H3, which is just basically the header here. But we're not going to fix that reference because we want it to move as we drag the formula. We're then going to put an and symbol, and all we need to do is put the square bracket on the end of the reference. So this is our function. We want the subtotal of whatever the contents of H3 says in this table, and we'll close that bracket and hit enter, and you see we have the same total. Now it may not be as understandable, but you can see it's highlighting H3 and it's saying we want H3 in this table. And now when I copy across this formula, you'll see I can just copy and paste it across the bottom and it's all completely fine. And if I untick the table totals and put them back on, you'll see we've retained the formula that we typed in. We haven't lost it by hiding the total row. And so that is a way of, if you have an incredibly large amount of columns in your table, of getting like a total row that you can just like copy and paste all the way along. And of course, if you wanted to change that into a count or something, you just need to change the function number in the subtotal to the one you actually need. And I think if you do this, you get your function numbers showing. So you can see that you have all of these counts and sums and standard deviations, products, etc., that you can pick from. And I would always, on this, encourage you to use the ones starting with 1, 0, because they also account for hidden rows, whereas the ones that don't have 1, 0 in front, although seemingly the same, they will also add up data on hidden rows. They will only exclude filtered out data. So there's a bit of a workaround for table total formulas if you have loads of them and you want to just be able to copy and paste them as if they were normal ranges. The sixth great reason why you want to be using tables as much as possible is the whole automatic selection of data when you hit numerous sort of features in Excel. So I would call it, perhaps refer to it as sort of auto data ranging. And this is what I mean. So if on the data menu you hit one of these sort buttons, and you probably just see it as a bit of a flash, it will automatically highlight all of the data in the table and apply that function to it. Same with the filter, anything like sort, remove duplicates, it automatically highlight that and it'll give you your, so if you want to do anything like that, maybe something like a forecast sheet, picks the whole thing up. So any buttons that you hit, it will automatically expand to pick the data, and that includes as well shortcut keys like Control A. Hit it once, it will automatically highlight the table data range. Hit it twice, it will pick up the headers and any total rows too. Hit it a third time and you get the whole sheet outside of the table. So because this table is like an object, it's automatically going to recognize it in Excel, and it just saves you like an extra click. And if you know your shortcut keys, it's even better. Sorting by product ID, sorting by customer, for example, it's perfect. Really, really fast. You don't need to worry about highlighting ranges before you do anything. Not convinced yet about tables? Well, here's reason number 7. Immediate one-click pivot tables. When you hit, there's a button on the data design menu, Summarize with Pivot Table. Hit it and look at the selection for your pivot table, the table name, and we'll just hit OK. And this, of course, you might have clocked on that the fact that it's picked up the table name means that any new data on that table is going to automatically feed the pivot table. And this is crucial, and this is a massive error trap that people fall into with pivot tables. They highlight the range that they want to pick up, and then when new data comes in, they don't realize it's not picking up the new data. So this is an amazingly useful feature, and like I say, one click straight in the table, summarize with a pivot table. And if I put on this 2024 and the customer name, now let's just put on, say, the product name might be a bit shorter, then when I put on new data, it'll automatically expand. So let's just prove that to you here. We've got some new orders here that I'm going to put on. I put them onto the bottom of this. Not only did I only paste in what you can see here, it's automatically put in my totals and subtotal and versus prior year formula that I happen to have on here. Put a whole load of other stuff on that. This pivot table now, let's just have a look where the bottom is. So it's at 672, and I refresh it, and you'll see new products that came in are automatically added, and I didn't have to do anything other than a refresh. So there you go, automatic pivot tables and dynamically referenced and updated for you without any kind of effort. Another time saver. And I have a bonus for you on pivot tables as well if you're using tables, because you can actually create relationships between different tables, which can totally save you having to do any kind of lookups and bringing all your data into a single table. So for example, if we go onto the data menu and click relationships, we can set up relationships between these tables. So I'm going to pick the table which is orders, and I'm going to say, right, that the customer ID relates to the, on the customer table, the customer ID. I hit OK. Alright, and that's created that one. And then let's do another one because we've got a product ID. So we'll say that the order table for the product ID is related to the product table product ID. Hit OK on that. Right, so our relationships between tables have been created. So now when we go on table design and hit summarize with tables, summarize with the pivot table, we pick the same table as we did before. And you might think, well, not much has changed, except for we go down here, you'll see we say more tables. We click on that. Do you want to create a new pivot table? Yes. We now have access to all these linked tables, and because they're linked, we can put into our pivot table with our orders. So we could just say 2022 orders, and we can now use our customer segment, for example, to break that down, even though customer segment wasn't even in our order table. But because we've linked it, we can do it. So we can have, which we didn't want product name, did we? So maybe we want customer segment as our column, and we now have product category as our row, and we have a whole new sort of pivot table kind of access system based off of linking those tables and creating those relationships. So that saves a massive amount of time, because to do that normally we'd either have to go down the Power Query route and link the tables together, or we'd have to put in some sort of lookup formulas and pull all that table data together into a single table. So just by creating these relationships, we can access all the data and we can run multiple different reports from our different tables of data and summarize things in different ways without having to write a single formula or go through learning any kind of new tools like Power Query. The 8th reason that makes tables a must-use feature of Excel is a really quick and simple one, but just really useful. And that is when you scroll down, I don't know if you can see, but the column headers, instead of being A, we've got A there, instead of being B, C, D, whatever, they column headers in the actual spreadsheet become your table headers. And clicking on them actually only highlights the table data. To demonstrate that, if I go back up, you can see there, you know, when I click like that, I'll get the whole data. But as I move down, it says 2021, I click it, it's now just highlighted that. It's just a really nice touch, great little feature there that just means that it's easier to read your data. It just saves you time, sort of freezing panes and things like that. Just another little time saver. A great little thing about tables, and reason number 9, is the formatting is automatic. So if you're in a table and you want to put some more data on the end of this table, I'm just going to pick some data here and bring in all of this. And this is unformatted data here. It's got, you know, there's no commas in the numbers, and the number of decimal places are somewhat random. When I go on the bottom of this table and paste it, you'll see what it's done is it's replicated the format of everything above. So it just saves that little bit of time there that you can, you know, saves kind of doing a paste special or some kind of like format painter and bringing it down. And as well as the fact it's brought in the formulas on the other columns too. But yeah, this little data format keeps everything consistent. It's just a nice touch and just saves that little bit of time. And it's one of those features. It's just a little thing on top of everything else that tables have to offer in terms of time-saving benefits. It means you can cut hours off your working week. Yet another good reason to be using Excel tables is the simplicity of highlighting the data and using it within formulas. I'm going to put a formula on this table to demonstrate how easy it is to pick up on names and stuff within the table. So up here, let's just say I want to do a sum if to see what, I don't know, Chuck Clark has been buying in 2023, right? So we'll use the sum ifs, and it's saying like sum range. Now normally, you know, you could be like highlighting areas like this, but with tables, as you hover over them, you get these arrows. So if I click where I get that, you'll see straight away puts in my name here, TBL orders 2023. It's going to pick it up. It's auto expanding if any new data comes in as well. So perfect. And I just clicked on it, hit my comma, criteria range, customer name, criteria, well, Chuck Clark, but so we're just going to say sorry, Chuck Clark here. No shortcut to that one, unfortunately. And hit enter, and there we go. You know, really good for picking up like the whole of that total, for example. Perfect for picking up and using in formulas. I'm just going to delete that. And another thing you might want to do is pick up data from other tables. So I'm just going to insert a column here and for customer segment, because I have another table with customer segment in it. I'm just going to do a quick X lookup. Don't worry if you don't know it. The key point is that I'm demonstrating is that how simple it is to reference stuff across sheets and data if you use tables. So my lookup value is going to be this customer ID. So I click on that, automatically gives me the name of that field. Hit my comma. I'm going to look for this on this customer table here. Again, hover over customer ID, comma. What answer did I want? I wanted customer segment. Hover over that till I get the arrow, customer segment, close my brackets, hit down, enter, sorry, and fill straight down, because that's another great feature of tables, of course. And we now have our customer segment built in. And let's say we're going to do the same with product name. So I'm going to put product segment on there, or product category. This time I'll hover over here, I'll right click and insert columns to the left. Just another way of doing something similar. And on our product thing here, I'm going to put this product category. I'm just going to copy and paste that name on here. Same thing, just demonstrate it again. Product name, so we'll go product ID, comma, lookup array, go to the product sheet, product ID again. What do we want back? We want this product category. And there we go. And double click on all of that so that it all fills out, and we've got this table now. Really simple way of entering formulas, and a really understandable formula, and really understandable ways of highlighting things. We're still going, yet more reasons coming up to use tables. Reason number 11, slicers. What are slicers? Well, slicers are a way of having effectively your filtering system on the table built onto buttons on screen. So let's put some slicers onto this table so that we can filter it quickly and simply. Before I do that though, what's the alternative? We've got these filter buttons here. So product category, I could hit there, hit on furniture, and I'll filter to furniture. Hopefully you're aware of that. But it's a bit clicky, and although there are shortcuts, so I could do Alt and the arrow down, and I could hit spacebar to tick and untick and enter for OK, it's still a lot more clunky than just hitting a button. Alt-AC to remove filters, by the way. So I'm just going to insert a few rows at the top here, just so we've got room for these slicers that I'm going to put on. I'll click anywhere in the table so I get my table design menu, and on there we have insert slicer button. What am I going to do? Well, I want to put some buttons so that people can pick the customer segment and the product category. Hit OK. And here they are. Not great looking, I must admit, right now, but that's no problem because we have slicer styles to pick from, and we can pick one that looks perhaps a bit more like our table and kind of match it up, and we can customize this if necessary by duplicating and then modifying the duplicate, which will be at the top as a custom one. That's for another time though. So now we've got them looking kind of okay. They're a bit messy, aren't they? But they do work. You know, we can click on these buttons and we're filtering our data and looking at it, and that's all kind of great. And we can click on these clear filter buttons or have multiple buttons, filters at the same time, and that's all great. And what I want to do though is quickly modify these so that they look a bit better. And when you click on them, you'll get a slicer menu appear. And on this, we can do things like change the number of columns. So if we change that one to 2 and that one to 2, and then we can sort of drag them around. We can snap them to the grid by holding down Alt. We'll do something like that, for example, product category. And this one we'll perhaps put over here. Maybe delete those 2 rows. You know, move that one over there a bit, say customer segment, just using the arrow keys. And there's all sorts of options on these menus that we could pick from, including like the heights of the buttons, you know, heights of the actual slicer. We can have them over the top of each other, etc, etc. And then there's a whole bunch of settings. So really feature rich options just on their own that can make your data tables look really good, especially if you've just got a little table and it forms part of a report. You could have like the actual end user be clicking on buttons rather than messing about with filters. So yet another time-saving tip and reason to use Excel tables in your spreadsheets. Reason 12 for using tables in Excel, and you might think this is the last one, but actually there's a bonus coming up in a second, so stick around. Reason 12 is moving columns around. Now, if you have an Excel table and your data's in a table, moving columns and rows is an absolute breeze, and all your formulas will stay intact, even when you do stuff that you might think looks pretty crazy and was bound to mess up formulas. It really doesn't. Now, let's say you want to move customer segment over here next to the category. You can click on the header there and click it again so that the whole column is highlighted. Now, when you get a crosshair sort of hovering anywhere around the border, you can drag this and it will automatically, if we drag it to there, just going to put it over there. Anything that was linked to that is going to stay linked to customer segment. It's not going to be picking up, right? Picks up the column based off of the header, not from the reference. So all your formulas are fine. And yes, it's sort of messed up the column widths, which is a little bit annoying, but you know, you could just highlight them and double click the top there and that would work. Or, you know, if it's the only thing on the sheet, you can always click on there and double click and that would like auto fit like your entire sheet, so that's fine. But what if you know, we've got a formula here, for example, that says that we want to sum from column 2021 to column 2024. Now let's do something really daft here. Let's put the customer segment right in the middle of that lot there and hit, you know, again, go up here and hit this to auto fit. Has that formula messed up? No, the formula stayed the same, but it's ignored this. You've not got an error from summing or anything. It's intelligent enough to recognize what it should be doing. So you haven't even got any problems there. So I'm going to undo that move. Also, highlighting rows, you can move them around and it will just insert rows wherever you want. Now if we go down to the bottom, and I'm just going to put a total row on the bottom here, you might think that on a normal data set, if we swapped that down there to the total, these totals would not pick up that new row because we've moved them outside of the formula range. But of course, with the referencing in tables, it's picking up the column total, so no problem there at all. So you're saving a whole load of time and effort of changing ranges and changing formulas because you could just move these columns around to your heart's content. Really, really simple to move stuff around in tables, insert rows, insert columns, everything's working. A whole load of Excel doing the hard work for you so you don't have to. Bonus reason why you should be using Excel tables, and actually this is probably one of the biggest reasons you should use them of all, and that is that they are your gateway to Power Query. And Power Query is a whole nother world of productivity in Excel that's just going to save you an unbelievable amount of time. So if tables haven't saved you enough time, Power Query is just going to accelerate absolutely everything else you can do. So why do you need them for Power Query? Well, to get data into Power Query, although you can get it from all sorts of things like files and databases and ranges of cells, if you hit from table stroke range straight into a button, it's going to open straight up in the Power Query editor. It's going to pull in all that data there. You've got all your column headings ready set. You've got a good name. The name has been picked up, and everything is, straight in. And you've saved a whole load of time in Power Query before you do anything else. So it's an entire another playlist of videos about how you use Power Query, so it's not one for here, but it is a bonus to let you know that you want to get used to using tables because it's going to open the door to the entire new world of productivity for you. If you want to get impressive results the fastest way in Excel, make sure you subscribe to this channel and have a look at these recommended videos too.